Okay, so this is an 06 Cayenne valve body, and I'm getting ready to do the Transgo SK-09D shift kit in it. But before I do, I wanted to show you a couple things. I'm going to take you through step by step, but I want to give you a quick tip when you're taking out the valve body. You're going to see that there's a metal bracket that goes from this bolt hole to this bolt hole, and it has a wiring harness attached to it. I'll see if I can show you a picture here. This right here. And it has a wiring harness that attaches to it right here. Now you can try to disconnect that wiring harness from this metal bracket, but it's usually very brittle and it may break. The other option is to take these two bolts out, but when you take these two bolts out, you're going to find that these little pins fall out. Looks just like this, and they hold in the solenoids. So if you decide to go that route, make sure that you have a pan or something to catch these pins, and then just pick them up with a magnet or something from the bottom of the pan. Okay, so this is the valve body out of the 06 Cayenne that I'm getting ready to rebuild. I'm going to be putting the Transgo SK-09D shift kit in it. Should correct most of the problems. Before I start tearing it down, I wanted to point a couple things out to you real quick. There are 3 different bolt sizes in this upper valve body. This is the one that you're going to remove and do most of the repairs to the valves and whatnot. So let's start with these yellow ones here. There's 4 that are the shortest, and they're 22 millimeters, and they go right here. Now let's go to the blue ones. There is 25 of the blue ones, and they are 28 millimeter. Then there are 10 of the red ones, and they are 40 millimeter, just so you know where they go back. Now, before you start taking the bolts out of this, I usually take 2 of these big squeeze clamps and I squeeze the upper valve body, which is here, to the lower valve body, because this upper valve body is loaded with check valves, and it usually has 2 or 3 check balls in it that you can lose and you'll really be screwed. So before you start taking the bolts out, make sure you have these clamps on, take the bolts out, and then flip the whole unit over. Once you do that, lift the separator plate and the lower valve body off together, and you'll see all those check valves and check balls will still be inside there, and they'll be in the correct place. Now Transgo does give you a little diagram, but it has a big warning on it that says, you know, this is just a general guideline. The check balls or check valves could be in different places. And so that's pretty much the tips for that. So I'm going to go ahead and get this disassembled, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so step 1 of the instructions, they want you to check the solenoid resistance. That's the first step. So how you're going to do that is you're just going to use your multimeter, and you're going to set it to ohms, and you're going to check the resistance, and you're just going to check it from pin to pin. And it's kind of a little bit of a bitch to get them in there. And make sure you don't bend the pins or anything. And you're just going to get it in there. And you want between 5 and 7 ohms. Now I've already checked all these and I know they're all good, but I'm just going to show you this so you know how to do it. Okay, so once you've checked your solenoids and you know that they've passed the ohms test or resistance test, then you're going to go ahead and grind this crimp off right here to release the end cap so that you can get to the armature. So let's go ahead and do that now. You can be pretty aggressive at first. I'm kind of holding it on a 45. Once you start getting close, it'll pop right out of there. See, it's starting to pop out of there already, so let's just go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, there it goes. Okay, so see that end cap popped right off of there. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the armature and the washer. You can see the washer inside there, the brass washer. And then there's a little bit of a step left where that cap was. So let's go ahead and grind that off now. Okay, so you don't need to overdo it, you just need to do it enough to get that step out of there, and now we can move on to the next step. Okay, so this one is all done now. The step is ground out of it, but before you grind the step out, make sure you remove the armature and the washer, this little thing here, so you don't damage it, and set it off to the side. And now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step, but before I do, let me show you why you're doing this. This armature and washer gets stuck in the solenoid body just like this. It should come out with no force at all, and it's stuck in there pretty good, and I'm sure most of them are probably going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to that step now, and I'll show you guys how to do that. Okay, for the next step, there's 2 drill bits that come in the kit. What they want you to do is take the armature and mic it and see which drill bit you're going to use. Now I've already done that, and I know it's going to be the longer bit. So then what you do is you take the solenoid body and you take the drill bit, and you're just going to want to shove it in reverse gently. Don't force it in. And you're going to want to do like 15 seconds of twist this way and 15 seconds of twist this way, and make sure you're pushing in. You'll feel some resistance down there with the spring and a stop down there, so make sure you're pushing it in and twisting. And once you do that, you should be in pretty good shape and can move on to the cleaning. Okay, so I've gone ahead and resized the armature bushing, and then I've cleaned it out with brake fluid and blew it out with air to dry it out. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the armature back in and see if it moves freely and if it falls right out like they recommend. If it doesn't fall right out, then I have more work to do, but you can see that it's working fine. You're going to want the same results. If it sticks in there at all, you got to do some more resizing and some more cleaning. This one's in real good shape. Okay, so once you've resized the bushing, the armature bushing, and it's moving nice and free like this, you can go ahead and take your cap, and I like to just go ahead and start the cap on there just a little bit by hand, kind of get it nice and centered. I don't know if you can see that or not. And then just take some thread locking compound red and just do a little bead all the way around the edge of the cap here. Make sure you don't get it inside. And then what you're going to do is just take your solenoid, put it down like this, put a 3/4 inch socket deep well on top of it, and pound it with a hammer to get it in place. Okay, so this is what the completed repaired solenoid looks like. You can see the cap is pressed on, and how I did that was with a 3/4 inch socket on top of it, and then just set it down on something solid and pound it in. Don't go too crazy. You can see the thread locker is oozing out at the edge there. Make sure again that you don't get it inside. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step, which is the valve body, but before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of these solenoids, and then I'll get back with you. Alright, so we're ready to go to step 1 of the valve body repairs, and that is going to be replacing the boost bushing and inner valve. And it's real easy to do. I'll show you how to do that real quick here. You're just going to push in on the end of the boost valve with your finger to loosen up the retainer. Grab the retainer with a magnet, set it off to the side, and pull the original boost bushing out. Now the original boost bushing is aluminum. The new one from Transgo is steel. They do look a lot different, but they're the same size and everything, so don't panic when you see that. And then you're just going to go ahead and shove that back in there. Push on it with your finger, take your retaining pin, and you're going to feel it lock in there, and you're done. Step 1 completed. Okay, so let's go ahead and do step 2 of the valve body repair, which is replace the TCC bushing and inner valve. You're going to do the same thing, just push on the end of it with your finger to loosen up the tension on the retainer. Grab the retainer with the magnet, set it out of the way. Now this one sometimes gets stuck in here, so don't be surprised if you got to push it in, you know, quite a few times to try to get it loosened up to pop out. This one's not too bad on this one, so let's go ahead and yank it out. And then this is going to be a little bit different than the last one because we are going to reuse this spring inside, and it's just going to go back inside the new valve here like so. Okay, that's ready to go in, but I do want to point out to you again that this new one looks totally different than the old aluminum one. And then just go ahead and shove it in the hole. Get your retaining pin, shove it on in there, drop your retaining pin in, and you're done. Step 2 completed. Okay, so step 3 of the valve body repair is going to be to replace the regulator valve and all of its components. And this one's a little bit different than the other two. It's under a lot more tension. So what I usually do is I take just a screwdriver or something and I push up on the retaining pin to get it to pop up, just like that. And then just go ahead and take a pair of needle nose and pull that out, because the spring's going to want to pop out. There's the spring right there. And then behind that is going to be a steel valve, so you can use your magnet again and just pull it out of there. Let me see if I can get it to dump out a little bit. Make sure you don't lose any of your... There we go. Okay. Might be able to just get a finger on it now. Pull that out of there, and you're just going to discard that whole assembly. The whole original assembly is gone. And you're going to start with this, the bushing. And you're going to put that in first. Then you're going to do the spring. And then you're going to do the end plug, which looks totally different. And then they also give you a different retainer. It looks totally different from the old one. And you're just going to shove that in with your finger again. And that's it, it's done. And you can see it sticks out further than the old one did. Okay, step 3 completed. Okay, so for the 4th and final step, you're going to replace one more regulator valve. It is not the next valve over in the line. Skip one valve over, and it's this retaining pin right here. You're going to go ahead and push on it to relieve the tension. Pull it out with your magnet, set your pin off to the side, and then you're going to go ahead and pull the valve out, the spring, and there's one more piece in there that you got to get out carefully. Here it comes. Pull this out, and you're going to discard all that stuff. And then you're going to put the new one in, which starts with this. And then you're going to do the spring. And then you're going to do the sleeve, which goes over the spring. And they give you a bigger retainer that you're also going to use. Okay, so the final step is the modifications of the separator plate, which I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Basically, you're going to do 8 holes at 046 and 6 holes at 042. And what I usually do is I just take a carpenter's pencil or something and I circle them so I don't get confused and drill the wrong holes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I'm going to get everything back together, get it in the car, and then we'll go for a test drive and see how it worked out. Okay, so I've got all the repairs done. I went ahead and put my clamps on each side like I talked to you about earlier. I went ahead and flipped it back over and put all my bolts in hand tight. Now I'm going to go ahead and torque them with the torque wrench to 89 inch-pounds, and you're just going to want to kind of start in the center and work your way out in a circular pattern until you get to the edges, and then when you think you're all done, go back and double check because it's real easy to miss one of these. Okay, so I've got the completed valve body back in, and you might remember at the beginning of the video I mentioned the bracket with the terminal that's kind of a bitch to get off. That is right here, this terminal right here, and I said I usually just disconnect the 2 bolts and then I let the bracket hang, and when I do that, those 5 pins are going to fall out that hold the solenoids in, which are right here. Now when you go to put it back together, just put a little assembly lube on the end of those pins and shove them up in there, and it'll hold it in place until you can get this bracket back in. I'm not going to do too much to show you how to do the filter and the pan and stuff like that, because if you've made it this far you're pretty much golden. But when I go to refill, I'll show you a little tip on that. The pan is all clean now, the magnets are cleaned and installed, and the new gasket is installed. And I'm getting ready to put it back on the Cayenne, but before I do, I wanted to give you the quick tip about refilling. You can try to build the gravity feed system that they suggest in the instructions. It's kind of a pain in the ass and it's a real slow process. I don't recommend it. You can spend the 85 or 90 bucks on the hand pump, which will probably get the job done for you real quick. I just go to Home Depot and I get a 2-gallon pump sprayer and I modify it to suit my needs. And what I mean by that is I leave everything intact as far as the handle and the trigger and everything. I add a piece of hose to it, and then I make this little copper J right here. And what you're going to do with that is just shove it up in here, hook it onto the standpipe right here, and then just go ahead and pump it and start filling it. Real easy process, not quite as fast as the more expensive hand pump, but it gets the job done. Okay, so when you're all done putting the transmission back together and you're ready to do the fluid and filter change, you can source all the parts individually if you want, but I like to use this kit. I get it locally from a place called ECS Tuning. It comes with the filter, the drain plug, the fill plug, the seals, 9 quarts of fluid, the pan gasket. They also give you a real nice list of tools that you need to do the job, and they give you complete instructions on how to do it.